Hello, this is the Basically channel. In this channel, we will briefly summarize and explain popular and topical books. This is recommended for those who don't have time to read books, or for those who just want to know what the book is about in a nutshell. This channel covers various genres of books such as self-help books, business books, novels and essays. We will upload videos every day when we can, so please subscribe to our channel. If you like this video, please hit the high rating button. We also welcome your comments. Please write anything about the books you would like to read and your thoughts on them. Now, let's get started with the book summary. Title: 100 Habits of People Who Are Somehow Pleasant to Listen to. Climax point. This book is aimed at people who are poor communicators and provides an opportunity to learn the power of listening so that they can approach conversations with confidence. The author states that it is important to have the ability to listen, and if you have this ability, you can speak well and elicit the true feelings of others in all situations, including first-time meetings, business negotiations, and romantic relationships. This book is filled with easy-to-understand explanations of specific listening techniques and episodes from famous people, and is packed with content that can be put into practice immediately. After reading the book, you will find yourself wanting to enjoy the conversation and realize the importance of listening. The key to a true good listener is to have the ability to draw out what the other person has to say without being conscious of detailed techniques. And this book gives you the courage to take the first step toward listening. The ability to listen is more important than the ability to speak. We sometimes want others to listen to us in order to solve our problems or get advice. However, when we do not get advice, we may feel self-loathing, thinking that the way we conveyed our message was not good enough. But that is a misunderstanding. The answer is not in others, but in ourselves. When solving problems and issues, it is important to listen carefully to the other person's story and gain insight, rather than taking the stance of getting advice from others. Then, you can solve the problem yourself. However, simply listening is not enough to gain insight. You need to concentrate on what the other person is saying. If you have the ability to listen, you may be able to extract hints from the other person better, or find answers on your own. By strengthening your listening skills rather than your speaking skills, you are more likely to be happy. Basic rules for listening. When listening to the other person, you should be aware of the following basic rules. A is to look the other person in the eye. This lets the other person know that you are interested and gives them a sense of satisfaction. The I is to maintain good posture. When you face the other person with your legs and arms uncrossed and in a forward-leaning posture, the other person will feel at ease. The U is to listen while nodding. If you use nodding while the other person is speaking, the conversation will proceed smoothly. Use it appropriately. Nod rhythmically if the other person is speaking happily. Nod slowly if the conversation is serious, and so on. E is to listen with a smile. Smiling makes it easier for the other person to open up to you. O means listen to the end. Do not interrupt the other person in the middle of what he or she is saying, but listen carefully to the end. Listen with the arrow of the heart pointing to the other person. The most important thing when listening is to try to understand what the other person is trying to convey most and how they feel. For example, recall the following conversation. Friend, I went on a trip to Kyoto the other day, and there were so many people. I had to wait in line to get a meal, and the wait was very long. Myself, oh, I didn't realize that. When I went to Kyoto last year, there was a traffic jam too. In this case, you have become the main subject of the conversation. The arrow of the heart is pointing to yourself. If you turn the arrow of your mind to the other person and listen to them, they will respond to what you just said by saying, "Oh, that's right. You must have waited a long time for your meal." People open up to those who listen to them and understand them. Always keep the arrow of your heart pointed toward the other person. And be aware of what is the most important message or feeling that the other person wants to convey. Listening skills at work. One thing that all good salespeople have in common is their ability to listen. The author once attended a meeting with top salespeople and was amazed at their listening skills. When the author began to speak, they quickly paid attention to the author, listening carefully, nodding and nodding, understanding the author's feelings, and talking to him. They must have good sales performance because they keep their mental arrows pointed toward what the other person is thinking and what he or she wants to do now. Even in business situations, it is important to listen with the other person's benefit in mind. For example, let's consider an appointment scene at a hospital. Receptionist, when would you like your next appointment? Patient, in 7 days, please. Receptionist, the 7th is a bit far from. How about the 8th? Patient, are you free on the 7th? Receptionist, the 8th is more convenient for me. The problem with this conversation is that the receptionist is putting the hospital's convenience first. Instead of saying, "The 7th is busy and you may have to wait longer, but the 8th is relatively free and you will have less time to wait," the patient will not feel bad. If you say, "How would you like to wait a little longer?" People like people who satisfy their sense of self-importance. By directing the arrow of the heart toward the other person and offering suggestions that benefit the other person, customer satisfaction will also increase. There are several points to consider when listening. To open the other person's mind. First, it is important to find something in common with the other person. For example, by matching your speech style, gestures, and speaking speed, the other person can feel that you are similar. This is called pacing in psychology. People who are easy to talk to naturally use pacing, but people who make others uncomfortable unconsciously engage in disengaging, anti-synchronizing behavior. For example, when the other person says, "It's cold in the winter, and I'm too lazy to go out." If you say, "I don't mind the cold, and I go out everywhere. The other person will feel uncomfortable. Instead, if you simply say, I can't wait to go out when it's cold. Can you? And match your words to how the other person feels, they will feel better about talking to you. Self-disclosure is also an effective way to open the other person's mind. However, there are 2 points to keep in mind when self-disclosing. The first is to match the seriousness of the conversation with the other person. If the other person says, I've been forgetting things lately, you should say, I'm the same way. It is important to reply naturally. I do the same thing. I write tasks on sticky notes. Self-disclosure that matches the seriousness of the other person's story will make the conversation more lively. Second, do not over-disclose yourself. When the other person talks about his or her failures and weaknesses, it is good for you to disclose your own failures in moderation. However, excessive self-disclosure may cause the other person to withdraw. By making moderate self-disclosure in response to the other person's story, the other person will feel that not only you, but also others are suffering from the same problems. Furthermore, the attitude of listening is important. When listening to the other person's story, there are 3 basic attitudes in listening. The first is unconditional positive regard acceptance, an attitude of accepting the thoughts and feelings of the other person without evaluation or judgment. It gives the other person a sense of security and encourages him or her to speak honestly. The second is empathic understanding, an attitude of trying to feel and understand the other person's experiences as if you yourself have experienced them. By sharing the other person's feelings, a good relationship can be established. The third is self-congruence, an attitude of asking honest questions in order to focus on the other person's story. When there is a part of the other person's story that you do not understand, it is important to honestly ask, what do you mean? Finally, when listening to the other person, it is important to pay attention to the other person's way of being. By understanding the other person's way of thinking and state of mind, the other person will feel that he has been accepted. In order to sense the other person's it is effective to listen while paying attention to the deeper aspects of the other person's life, such as what kind of person they want to be, and whether they are leading a life that is true to themselves. The questioning skills of a good listener. Good conversationalists use a variety of questioning techniques. There are 2 types of questions: open questions and closed questions. An open question is one that the other person cannot answer with a yes or no. For example, what products have you tried recently? For example, how did you like the product you recently tried? This is a question that is easy to elicit a response from the other person. This makes it easier to get the person's true feelings, but may be difficult for some people to answer. On the other hand, a closed question is a question that can be answered with a yes or no. For example, have you ever thought about introducing a machine to the market? For example, have you ever considered installing a machine? This is a question that can be answered easily and is a conversation starter. This is easy to answer and can be a good conversation starter. But it can be difficult to expand the conversation and may feel like an interrogation. The important thing is to elicit what the other person wants to talk about. It is important to detect the other person's interests and concerns and tailor your questions accordingly. The first way to do this is to ask questions related to topics the other person has previously discussed. For example, if you heard in a previous conversation that your grandchild has entered elementary school, you might ask, "How is your grandchild doing?" and ask, "How are your grandchildren doing?" Another way is to ask questions based on the other person's background. For example, if someone is busy at work, you might ask, "How is your work these days?" If you are busy at work, you can ask, "How is your work going?" Asking questions that are relevant to the other person's interests will help keep the conversation lively and reduce the risk of offending the other person. Be interested in the person you are talking to on a regular basis and hone your questioning skill. Finally, this book is divided into 7 chapters on how to develop your listening skills. The book begins with listening basics, followed by detailed explanations in the following order: how to listen at work and in relationships, how to listen to open the other person's heart, listening skills to capture the heart, how to improve your questioning skills, how to acknowledge the other person, and how to listen to set the heart. The book covers a total of 100 points, but they are organized by item and spread out so that they are easy to read. It is also possible to begin reading at the item of interest. With the current corona disaster, listening skills are becoming increasingly important as more and more people are communicating remotely. I hope that many people will pick up this book and acquire the ability to listen.